I'm Ann Butera, and this is Simps of Inspiration. Today, I'm so excited to have Dana Barbieri with me for our conversation. Dana is one of my oldest blogging friends, and she also has been a great inspiration and encouragement for me throughout my creative journey. We met in an online painting class quite a while ago. Was that 9 years ago, I think? Something like that. And we became friends, and I even took a class that you had quite a while ago, Dana, your sketchbook class. We
Yeah.
collaborated on a couple projects, and our first 2x2 sketchbook that we collaborated on together was featured in Uppercase magazine, which was my first time being in a magazine. So
Yay.
we have been through a lot together, which is so exciting to have you here today. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do before we get started talking?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dana. Thank you, Anne, for having me on today. I want to say to your viewers that I'm a little nervous. So if I'm used to being behind the camera, not in front of it. So if I fumble my words, I do apologize. So, yep, I'm Dana. I live in New York with my family and my pets. Well, they are a part of my family.
Of course.
I like to make things. So whether that is a painting, drawing, sketchbooking, collaging, knitting a sweater. Right now I'm winding some yarn to sort of help with my nerves.
And you have that beautiful shawl on that
The
you
shawl,
knitted.
yeah. So I like to try a lot of things, but I really think, painting, making art and knitting is sort of at the top of what I enjoy, but I do like to dabble in a lot of things. So yeah, and I blog all about it on my website, littlebutterflystudio.com.
Awesome. Well, today's conversation is going to be a little bit different. As part of my 10-year Learning to Paint celebration this month, we are going to share the roles of interviewer. So after I ask Dana my usual questions, she will also ask me those questions. So it'll be interesting turning the perspective of our conversation to me instead of just to my guest. So my first question is always, where do you find inspiration, and what do you do when you're feeling stuck or when you're feeling uninspired to get inspiration flowing again?
So I want to say that I find inspiration, I probably would say first in nature. But thinking about it more, I think find it everywhere if I'm paying attention, to be honest. Other artists, of course. I love looking at all different kinds of art. Um, yeah, I mean, a book that may be something I read in a book, a song that I hear, different color combinations, that type of thing. Yeah, I think that it can sort of be found in a lot of places for myself. Um, and if I'm not feeling inspired, I don't, I don't know. I think because I work on so many different projects all the time that I will just maybe work on something else if I'm not feeling like doing the thing. Or maybe I'll say, let me sit down for 5 minutes and, give it a try. If it's still like, ugh, I just don't feel like this is coming out, not even coming out right, but I just am not into it. I'm just going to let it go and come back in another time. I'll take a walk maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I really tried not to like worry about it so much. And that's hard sometimes, but I know that it's okay, rest and, it's going to come back. I think I've been making things out for such a long time. When I look back on my life, I'm like, just so many crazy things that I've tried that, yeah, I think it's not gonna disappear. What about you, Anne? Where do you find your
Well,
inspiration?
definitely nature and my garden. And you're so right that inspiration is everywhere if we're paying attention. I think that's really the key, to be paying attention and to be open to things. Then you will find inspiration everywhere. And before our chat, I was thinking about this. And I like to do a lot of different things too. I like to crochet and garden. And of course, my garden is a big source of inspiration for me. But also, I like taking photographs. I like writing. I like cooking. And when you mentioned books, books can be such a huge inspiration, and sometimes not even in the way that you think, not art books or craft books or whatever. There's a spread that I did in my sketchbook. Oops, how many pages in there? That was inspired by a cookbook. There was
Oh,
just
wow.
a photograph in a cookbook of a whole bunch of vegetables. And I
Nice.
was like, I want to paint that. And so just looking at things, anything as a source of inspiration, you find there's a lot more inspiration than you think. In
Yeah.
terms of getting inspiration flowing, I do sometimes feel stuck or like I'm not in the mood, or any ideas that I have are just sort of fizzling. And you're right that you just have to give it time. And sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to just keep going and fight through our blocks or our times of when we're not feeling inspired. But I think stepping back and just being gentle with ourselves is really important. And maybe doing something else, picking up a different sort of project, picking up a different medium. Having a sketchbook, I think, is a really great way to keep yourself from being uninspired, where you can play around and experiment and try different things that you wouldn't necessarily do in something that would be a finished piece of art, just to play and enjoy the process, which I think is really the point of it all, or it should
Yeah,
be.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Yes.
So, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you've faced during your creative journey? And what did you do to overcome that?
I would say the biggest is probably self-doubt and comparison um, to other makers. I don't know. I guess I don't struggle with it as much anymore. But it can be hard, and even when you're sort of observing and you're thinking, "Oh, I want to do what they're doing," or yeah, like why can't I do that? It just those things that go through your head. Excuse me. Um, but so I don't get too. Now I sort of turn it around and I think, well, I love their art. Like that's their art, right? So that's what they're making. Like thinking of it more as like, well, what can I make? So maybe I don't make what they're doing, but I've got something that I can make. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I try to reframe it, because there's always, and also I was also thinking about this too, like when I was younger, like I used to love to sing, not to sing like for anybody or whatever, just as a, something that I like to do when I was little. Like, and I remember somebody being like, "Oh, you can't, you don't have a
Oh,
singing voice." And like, I just remember that feeling of like, oh, like just like it kind of cut off the joy of it. And like, so, why? Like, why wouldn't you sing? Like, if you enjoy something like for yourself, like, so now it's like, okay, if I want to sing, I'm gonna like I might know my kids by singing, or I'll sing to my animals, or whatever. If I'm in the car just driving, like, because I enjoy that, right? So yeah, so that's kind of went off a little bit on that question, but
no. And I think that's such an important thing, because so many of us have our dreams or our passions squashed by comments that people make or by things that we kind of indirectly learn. I know when
yeah,
I was a kid, I loved making art, but I got the idea that I was not good at it. and I don't know if anyone specifically said that I was bad at it, well, other than getting not an A on a art assignment and thinking, okay, I guess that means that I'm not good at this, and seeing someone else in the class being praised and being
Yeah.
fawned over. And so I think, okay, well, that's not for me. And so I
Yeah.
think that happens to so many of us. We have joy in the process, and then there's that critical voice that comes from outside, and then it starts to be internalized. And that's so hard to overcome.
It is. It's really like, and I hadn't really even thought about like the singing thing. Like, not that I want to be some singer, but like, it's something that I enjoyed. Like, why? Because, and I just sort of thought about it. Like, really, within the last couple of days, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And I know I've heard people say that with making art. Like, there's maybe been a comment that was made and then just shut it down. But like singing and making art, that's like, you know, little kids run around and do it all the time. They don't really think like, oh, who cares? You know, they don't think, oh, that person's not gonna like it, right? Like just
Right.
like sit down and do it. It's
Exactly.
not, it's just for their own personal pleasure, right? Yeah.
Right. And we should make
Yeah.
sure we keep doing those things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, for me, in terms of the biggest challenge, I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think in some ways, one of the biggest challenges has been the fact that I'm self taught. And I started out not knowing anything about anything, not knowing how to paint or draw, and just wanting to.
Right.
And also, being self-taught, there's no one directing me, this is what you should do next, or this is what you should try next. So my journey has been, I guess, a little bit circuitous, and maybe a little more complicated than it needed to be, because it's been a lot of trial and error. I mean, I think we learn a lot of things by trial and error, and
Oh, yeah.
um, I think it's a wonderful way to learn, learning by doing, because really the only way you learn to do something is by doing it, not by reading about it or seeing someone else do it. And so, in terms of overcoming that as a challenge, I mean, it's a difficult thing and it's a lifelong process. Um, I've read as much as I can. I've taken some online classes about things, especially things like the business aspects of it, because that's a whole nother layer of challenge. And doing that on your own is um, complicated. I don't think anyone ever has any true answers of how someone should do something. But I think also not putting too much pressure on myself to have it all figured out has helped me to, I guess,
Not give up.
not give up, definitely not give up,
Yeah.
and to keep going. I think not giving up is key for anything you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so true. That is so true. And hard. Sometimes so hard.
Oh, it's so hard,
It's
because
so
I mean it would be a lot easier to give up, wouldn't it? So kind of, I guess it's a similar question. What has been the biggest lesson that you've learned on your creative journey, or the best piece of advice if someone has given you a really great piece of advice?
I'm gonna say the biggest lesson I think I've just learned from making things for so many years is that I just need to do it for me. Like I realize like I think I use a lot of like making sort of like even just dealing with as a stress relief, coping mechanism, yeah, self-care. Self-care.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm learning that more and more as life goes on. That I need that. Like I need to take care of me so I can take care of everyone else that I need to take care of, you know. So even if it's not a ton of time or whatever, like I still that's important part of me. So yeah, it helps to fill me up so then I can sort of be there for my family, in the way that I want to be.
Yeah, and I think so much creativity spills over then. When you are being creative in one area, you can be more creative in other areas of your life. And things like problem solving and conflict resolution and all of that,
Yeah.
you get more ideas just by being more creative in all areas of your life, but especially in terms of making things with your hands and making art and
Yeah, I feel like this is like we could have like a whole giant conversation, right? Just about that.
right. And I have a little note hung up behind me. There's a little heart-shaped piece of paper there, and it says creativity is self-care. I think that's so true because I always feel better when I've been making something or being creative. And if I've been away from art making, or if I haven't done anything else creative for a while, I get kind of crabby or in a bad mood, and I need to just sit down and get back to it.
I know, right? I know. It just even if it's for 5 minutes, it's just like I just need that little
Uh-huh.
time, right? Just to be.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what would you say to
Well,
that
I
kind
think I would say the biggest lesson I've learned is to just keep going and to not give up. I mean, when I first started out, I was not very good at the things that I was doing. And the current class that I have on Skillshare, I share a lot of those early paintings. And it was really interesting for me to look back on them. And some of them at the time I was really proud of because I was starting from knowing nothing. And now looking back at them, it's like, oh, they're not very good at all. But
Aw.
the, the whole point, though, is that I didn't give up and I kept going. And that making art, like so many other things, is something that you can learn and it's a skill that you can build as you go. So that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about is encouraging people to keep going and to not give up because we are all beginners at some point and that's just a natural thing. It's not
Yeah.
anything to be ashamed of. It's not anything to be embarrassed by. I mean, I know today there's a lot of pressure to share things on social media and to
Yes.
have these beautiful images, but that beautiful image isn't really the point. The point is the process and the whole experience of being creative because it's
Yeah.
important for us, for who we are and for our being and our soul, even, I would say. So,
I agree 100%. I was looking at a sweater that I had knit, and I'm like, I love the sweater. I love wearing it, but I loved more the time spent working on the sweater, right? Yeah. So yeah, and I think too, like if somebody's working, starting and feeling like, oh, I don't like whatever, I don't know, acrylics or whatever, doesn't feel right. We'll try something else, like try watercolors and try crayons and just try all different things, and see which one feels right for you.
well, and also sometimes when you first try something, you don't like it because you
You
don't
don't know how
really,
to use
right,
it.
exactly. And so, I mean, there's going to be a learning curve for anything.
Yes.
And giving up the first time you try something, I mean, unless you truly, truly hate doing it,
Yeah.
giving up the first time you try something is really actually kind of sad.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you're right. It feels like, why do we expect to like sit down and like be an expert at something, right? Like
right.
having never done it, maybe, right? I think that's a lot of pressure.
It is a
Too much.
lot of pressure. I mean,
Like a piano. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was going to say sometimes you really are not good at something and you don't like it. If you're not good at it and you don't like it, then
Right.
you don't. one example is kind of funny. I had this fantasy of learning how to play the accordion.
Yeah.
And so a few years back, my parents' neighbor had an accordion in their basement or attic or something that they weren't using. And so I borrowed it and I watched some YouTube videos and I practiced every day. And
Wow.
it was terrible. And I could never figure out how to use both my hands at the same time. And I just kept trying and trying. And eventually I thought, okay, I think I'm never going to learn how to do this. I'm not really enjoying it. I'm not very good at it. I can put that fantasy aside. I tried. I can put that
So you
fantasy
let it go.
aside
But you
and
gave
I
it
let
a
it
fair
go.
amount of time. Yeah, you gave it a fair try though.
I did give it a fair try. And I mean, maybe I can't really see myself going back and trying again. But I'm glad that I did try. And as sad as it is to know that I'll never play the accordion,
You never
um,
know. You never know.
you never know.
It could happen. You may find somebody that's like really, really can play it and can spend the time and teach you, right? I mean,
Right.
in person, maybe
In
that'll
person. Maybe that'll help instead of my funny YouTube learning experience.
Goodness.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, thank you so much, Dana, for spending some time chatting with me today. I'm so glad that you got to be one of my sips of inspiration. And I hope everyone will go check out Dana and her website, littlebutterflystudio.com.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much,
Thank you.
everyone. See you next time.